Hello, and welcome back to the Wheel Talk Podcast, first episode of 2024. Crazy. It's always so weird when it's a new year. It feels like it takes 2 months to start writing the correct year on a piece of paper. And by then you're already 2 months into a 12-month cycle.
Do you think of time now as like years plus COVID? Like now it's 4 years since COVID. Is that like how you see time now in a way? Sometimes I do.
Yeah, I think COVID's a good marker. It's also like, when we used the 2000 as a marker, now we can use 2020 as a marker. 2000 was a really long time ago.
Yeah. Really long.
As you just heard, we've got Lauren Rowney and Gracie Elvin here for our first episode of the year. And full disclosure, we are recording this before the Aussie National Championships that are happening because Lauren is going to have a baby and we don't know when.
Well, actually,
it might be next week.
Update.
Oh.
I'm going to be induced next week. It's just a matter of what day. So.
Very good.
It feels weird to kind of know.
Lauren's going to have a baby next week.
It's weird to know that you're having a baby like on a day.
Yeah. But also good job for like making that decision. It's not an easy one. So
it wasn't made for me, honestly. There was actually no option because you'll never guess the day they scheduled Harry's surgery. My due date.
Wait, do you want this in the podcast?
It's fine. Really?
It's very serendipitous, hopefully in a good way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot to process.
Did they ask you first?
I don't think they care that I'm giving birth. But that's like, no, that's wrong. Like, I understand the care of Harry is our highest priority, but it's kind of hard. It's conflicting because this baby's also really important. But anyway, like, I'll be 39 plus a few days, and that's a really healthy time to induce. I'm not really scared.
So we're recording this episode before Aussie Nationals because we want Lauren on the podcast at least once before she has to leave due to family, having a baby, and also Harry. And if anyone follows Lauren on social media, you'll know what they've been going through this year. Speaking of social media, Gracie announced her big news on social media as well over the break.
Yeah, pretty much the last couple of months of what I've been obsessed with, I haven't really been able to say, which is like either being worried about what I'm doing or reading a parenting book about what to do, because it's like, as you both know with your first kids, you just like, I've never done this before and I don't know if what I'm doing is bad, but usually it's not. So I've been actually really enjoying it lately, and second trimester is much, much better.
So we've got a lot going on for the members of the Wheel Talk podcast. Gracie and I will be here next week to talk about Aussie Nationals and TDU and everything that's happening in Australia. Gracie's still going to be on the ground at TDU, which is super exciting. So hopefully we get some fun stories out of that. And yeah, we'll hopefully have Lauren in and out, but we'll see how things happen with the toddler and a newborn baby, because you can never top yourself in 2021.
Yeah.
Jumping on the podcast one day after birth. That was crazy. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of just so everyone knows. That's why we're not talking about Aussie Nuts today, but we will. We got some awesome listener questions that we're going to get to today, and a tiny bit of news that we'll just touch on a little bit, plus a little bit of what's coming at TDU. But because of what's been going on the last week in the women's cycling world and in Australia, we wanted to start out this episode by just talking for a moment about Melissa Hoskins, or Dennis. There was an incident over the holiday break involving Rowan Dennis and his wife, Melissa, Olympic medalist on the track, and a longtime member of the Green Edge organization. Tragically, she passed away, and we're not going to touch on the details of that because, honestly, we don't know enough to talk about it, and I don't think any of us want to talk about the details of what happened. There's written pieces on Escape Collective of what we know, so if you want to check that out, that's up to you. But for us here, it's not something that we want to touch on, but we do want to talk about Mel because both of you were teammates with her. Gracie spent the most time with her out of the three of us, and the outpouring of love for her from the women's cycling world and also from the Australian and Girona communities that they were a part of has been overwhelming, to say the least. There's been a ton of people who were really, really close to Mel who've written incredible testaments to her loyalty and her goofiness and many things about her. So we just wanted to talk about Mel for a minute before we dive into the rest of the episode. And I'll hand it over to you, Gracie.
Yeah, you've really raised a lot of good things in there already. It's a really sad time for the cycling community, and particularly those that knew Mel well. I was a teammate of hers for 3 years, but some of the other riders, particularly in the track program, were even closer to her and spent 24/7 for many years almost building towards such big goals like the Olympics and their world championship in the team pursuit, a world record. They've experienced highs and lows. I was rooming with the track endurance team in Rio when they had that really big crash in that week before their big event. And they all rallied around each other, Mel included, to really pick themselves up and to try and do that best on competition day. It's an unimaginable loss. It's a shock. And I think it's still taking some time for people to process it. I think because something like this is so unexpected. Something that has been really good to come out of it is two things that I can think of right now. That is the beautiful words that people have been sharing about Mel that I can attest to are true. She was the life of the party, very funny, always had a great movie quote that she pretty much peppered into every sentence. And so loyal, very committed as an athlete for herself. She would be one of those uber professionals, always doing everything right, but better than that, she was committed to her teammates. On the road, you could always rely on her to be there when needed, to do a ripper lead out or to win the race herself. And I can't attest for the track program, but she was really a vital cog in that engine. So yeah, it's the other good thing too is that the cycling community have rallied around each other. There's been lots of messages circulating around each other for support. I've received a few myself, and I know many others have been receiving those as well. So it's, despite this awful tragedy happening, it's brought everyone closer together again. And I do hope that something positive can come out of this.
Well said, Gracie. And just lots of love to her family and those close people to her, especially those children.
Yeah, I think a lot of people with the whole situation are just thinking of her family and their two kids, and sending all of our love to them and everyone that she was close with, because I know especially in the Girona community, the mom unity, as I call it, she was a huge force in that group, and yeah, very fiercely loved by the people that she was close to. So we the Wheel Talk podcast, our sympathy and our love goes out to everyone who's hurting at this time, and unimaginable situation. And that's what we're gonna say on the matter. We'll remain in Australia for a bit of news that happened whilst we were not recording, and that is that Sarah Gigante announced a premature departure from Movistar with 1 year left on her contract to join AG Insurance Soudal. She's going to make her debut with her new team at TDU, so that will be exciting to see. She's been barely racing for the last couple years whilst on Movistar for various reasons, injuries and health and stuff. So it's going to be great to see what this new team can offer Sarah and how they can support her as a developing rider, because she's she's been in the world tour for a couple years, but she's still very fresh in the cycling world. And I think a lot of support needs to go into her career for her to really achieve her potential, which I think AG Insurance Sudal is a great place for her to be in that regard. So excited to see where that goes.
And I've heard that she's in some pretty good form, so we'll definitely know soon.
Transition straight into TDU. So 3 stages coming up, Tour Down Under this week. As you're listening to this podcast, it's later this week. The first stage is a sprinter friendly stage. The second stage is rolling with a slight climb to the finish. And the third stage is the really exciting one, finishing on Wollonga Hill, which is the first time that the women's event has been able to finish there. And the lineup includes defending winner Grace Brown with her teammate Cecilia Tripp-Ludwig. That's going to be really interesting that she's decided to go down to TDU. It is a provisional start list that I was looking at, so perhaps that's not correct, but I would be excited to see.
I spotted her training in the Adelaide Hills over
There
Christmas.
you go. It's
real. With her boyfriend.
I guess taking into account who her partner is, it makes sense that she'd be down there. And then, Trek have a really strong lineup again this year with Spratty, who almost took it from Grace last year. So we'll get to see those two go head to head on Wollonga, which will be pretty cool. Brody Chapman, Loretta Hansen, and their new rider, Felicity Wilson Haffenden, is going to be there, which is super exciting. Of course, as you'd expect, Liv Alula Jaco is starting with Aussie/Kiwi. The bottom of the world, the bottom of the world team. Ella Wiley is going to be lining up for them. So excited to see that. And 2020 winner Ruth Edwards will race for Human Powered Health. So that's also pretty exciting. Plus, ITT World Champ Chloe Daggert is lining up for Canyon SRAM. All in all, the start list for TDU coming up looks like a very exciting race with a lot of opportunity.
It's really good to see, even though it's provisional, like the more teams coming out and better start lists, because it's World Tour, but, it's still a long way away. And unlike men's cycling, the women's teams still have to factor in their budget for the year. And that's a huge cost compared to European races to come this far. So I feel like much like the men's TDU, the women's is gaining some nice momentum there, good reputation for being a great race, but also a really good opportunity to train in warm weather, stack it with Cadell's road race. And I think that this is one of the stronger fields that we've ever seen. So that's going to be really exciting.
I think I just want to give a shout out to Carly Taylor and Annette Edmondson, who are the 2 race directors for the race. Carly obviously being a very close friend of mine. I get a lot of the insider knowledge. They've been working super hard to really make this event into one of the premier tours of the year. And racing in Australia does present its challenges, particularly financially. So a race in Australia costs far more money than running anything else in Europe, because you've got to get the teams out here. And as a condition of hosting the Tour Down Under for the men's race, the UCI put pressure on the organisers that they have to fly the men business class. And this is something that, yes, it came directly from the UCI, which means that you can imagine how much money the head sponsors are putting into this race just to host it. Obviously, we want equity in sport. So what Carly and Nettie are really working towards is that the women have the same opportunity in the future to fly as well business class. But for now, they're able to fly over, I think, all the World Tour teams for free. And I'm not sure actually about the other teams, how that works, but there is some sort of subsidization there, subsidy, to make sure that they get a really good lineup. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. They're working tirelessly to make this a week-long tour as well.
I love this race so much. I feel like this was one of the highlights. Getting to do this race, it was one of the highlights of my career, because you'd go down, it was like a completely different start to the year than anywhere else, because the racing it's a stage race, so it's not nearly as insane as starting your season at Omloop, for example. And it was a really fun intro into the year. The weather was incredible, but Adelaide is just gorgeous. Like the Adelaide Hills, riding in there, the week in between TDU and Cadell's where you just kind of get to hang out in Adelaide and train was so much fun. It was just like coffee shops and super long rides, and yeah, never saw a kangaroo, which was a little bit of a disappointment.
Really?
That's amazing.
Oh, that's so surprising.
They're like everywhere.
Particularly, in Adelaide.
Did you see a koala?
Yeah.
No, I never saw a koala except the one in the at the start village.
Oh, there's tons there.
Yeah. Oh, that's sad. You're gonna have to go back, Abby. 2025.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we gotta go. Well, we all are gonna go, right? That's the plan. I think in 2019 when we did TDU, it actually wasn't. It was relatively mild. Like it was warm, but it wasn't unreasonable. There was only one stage where it was like out in the vineyards that finished with that climb. That was like that stage sucked because it was so hot. But that was the only one.
Well, I love TDU, and for any Aussie listening, for me, I always referred it to as like the adult schoolies week in a way. That's how it sort of felt like for me. Riding bikes and then going out in the evening. This is obviously when I wasn't an athlete. Having like dinner out and drinks, and then like just hanging out with people all day in Lycra. It was great.
Yeah. If people want to go watch a stage of the Tour de France but can't afford it, I say go to the Tour Down Under. It's actually better.
It is.
100%.
It's so cool. And there's so many people that go to this race. Like just it seems like the entire Australian cycling community, of which there are many, just all flock to Adelaide for TDU. And it's really cool.
It's like schoolies week.
It's so cool. Yeah. The weirdest part for me racing the race was feeding and service on the opposite side.
On the wrong side.
Weird. So weird.
Yeah.
That took some getting used to, but man, it was a good race. Anyway, so TDU coming up this weekend, and we will be back to talk about it after the event. But can you guys shed any light on like what Wollonga being in the race means to the race, and also what that means for the riders that are lining up and who it might favor?
I think Wollonga is an iconic stage for the Tour Down Under, and that's something they worked really hard to make happen, the organisers of the women's race. It's 3 stages, the tour. So Wollonga, the hill itself, Grace, I'm guessing you've been up it a few times just for fun. I mean, we never got to race up it. It's a short, sharp effort. I mean, your Richie Ports, I think he won it the most out of every competitor, right? And you're a rider like Richie Port can win up there, and a rider like I think Simon Gerrans could win up there too, from memory. So I'm just referring to what the men have done in the past. So for me, it's iconic, and it's a really cool thing that the women get to experience themselves, because the atmosphere on that hill as well is just something else when you're on the hill watching the race. So imagine for the riders, it's going to be something quite special to experience. But looking at the start list, I mean, I think that sort of finish would suit more so than Gigante would be someone like Cecile.
And she's coming into the season with a lot of good vibes after the way that her 2023 ended. The incredible performance at Tour Scandinavia, plus third at the world or second at Worlds. So she's starting the year with a lot of great memories. And I feel like it's always interesting when you have a rider who has like a really good start of the season and then kind of peters off, and has a rough second half of the season, that they have a harder time getting back into the flow of things. But if you ended your year on a high, you either overtrained during the break because you were too excited, or you come in with that positive feeling kind of fueling you. So I'm excited that she's already getting into racing, given she had such a good end of the season.
I don't know how you feel about this, Gracie, but like 10 years ago or something, always got the sense, particularly because of Green Edge, that Aussies at nationals, I'm not sure if the team held back some of the riders, but some riders were always like flying in January, or at least were at 90% or 85%, but their 90% compared to someone's 100% was like 110. That when some of the Europeans were coming over, like I even remember the first time Annemiek did it, or Taylor, like it was such a shock to the system to be racing in January and to have like already that high intensity. But it seems like now, even if I look at here in Belgium, how many of the Belgian men are racing the beach racing, which is really intense racing, it seems like people have, and I'll go back to referring to the women, have better form in January than previously. Like it was kind of unheard of when I was on Lululemon to be doing such high intensity early January.
It definitely changed throughout my careers. I reckon that shift was around that time that you retired, Lauren. So I remember 2012 to maybe, I don't know, 2015, you notice that bigger difference between the Aussies, especially because we had the Tour of Qatar, and that was kind of that nice middle ground between Aussie racing and European racing. And because it was midway geographically as well, a lot of the Europeans went to that, and you could see that difference in condition because of the intensity we were doing, but also racing in the heat that we were more used to. But I reckon around that time, around 15, 16, I think 16 was the last time they had Qatar, you were like barely notice the difference anymore, and way more riders and teams were doing winter training camps in nicer conditions. So Tenerife and Mallorca and anywhere that they could get high and still stay warm, but usually just going somewhere that was warm. And I think from then on, you wouldn't notice the difference. And I think now, the Aussies don't really have much of an advantage. I think it's the level's a lot higher in general. The depth is more, so you just don't notice things as strongly either. It's an interesting one, but it was frustrating at the time once that shift started happening.
Yeah, it'll be, I think with like Aussie nationals, it'll be interesting to see how a lot of the Aussies are going, given that it's also an Olympic year. Like you don't want to be going too good already in January right now. And I think like with Brody and how well she was riding last year, and then with the way that the rest of her season went, I think I'm curious to see how she'll be riding going into Aussie Nationals and going into this. And there's a couple riders that I think fall into that category. Loved seeing her in the green and gold though throughout the year, even if it was just kind of training out on the roads of Andorra.
I think she'll have good form.
Hopefully. She was definitely a worthy winner, and it was a shame that we didn't get to see that jersey more in the peloton. But Trek have a good, strong team. They've got 4 riders, so they're going to be pretty well matched to Jayco. I think Grace Brown's one out again, which will be tough for her, and she's definitely probably one of the most marked riders.
Poor Grace.
I think we probably don't need to talk too much about our pre-thoughts of nationals if we're going to be late on this podcast.
Or we'll look really smart.
Yeah, I think, yeah. got lots of predictions. But going back to the Aussies trying to balance that fitness, back when I was racing with Green Edge, it was like, try not to be too fit, but then there was that pressure that you still had to go and win. So it was confusing for a few months, like in your pre-season camp at the end of the last season, to be like, we don't want you to cook yourself. We want you to be good in the classics, or whatever the goal was for that rider. So for me personally, it was the classics. And then by nationals, it was almost like they'd forgotten that meeting, and they were like expecting everyone to be sharp and on form. And if you were just off the mark, then you'd kind of get punished, and then you wouldn't get your leadership for the next race that you were supposed to. And it was just like, fuck's sake, every time. Like, what, you can't have it both ways. Like, and also just that personal pressure, team/personal pressure for Green Edge in particular. It was really important to get the Aussie jersey in the team because of being the only Aussie World Tour team, men and women. Men had the same pressure. And the personal pressure as well. To be a World Tour level rider, you don't want to get beaten by
No.
national level riders. Like you, Lauren, I'm sure you can.
I had the
Abby
opposite
too,
experience to you,
It's-
Gracie.
but it's just like you get the most nervous for racing at home because it's like you need to prove yourself that you're good. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a weird time, and I do feel for the pros, particularly the ones in Jayco, because I think they just have that little bit of extra pressure. But all of the World Tour riders at Aussie Nationals feel that way to some level. So it is really hard to balance.
Yeah, it was actually going home every year got harder for me. It was such a mind fuck, to be honest, because I was on the other side of my team's approach was the European approach, and like Gracie touched on, during the years that I was racing, it wasn't emphasized to be in form in January. So they really held us back. And that was something I struggled with because I knew every time I showed up, I think the one time I showed up to nationals in 2015, I had some form and I actually had a decent January, just some bad luck with crashes and just not racing well as a team in the road race. That was always really difficult for me because, like you said, there were eyes on your back because at that time, I think there were less of us female pros too. So it was kind of like you had this dominant force, the Green Edge team, that everyone wanted to be. And you knew they were going to be in form. And then it was just like if you were a pro and you finished in like the second bunch or something, people were kind of scratching their heads going, you race in Europe. And, you know, you don't want to bring out the excuse book and everything, but I always struggle with that. And it would have been nice to have one really, really positive experience at nationals, but I actually never had that in my career. But things have changed now. I'm sure it's a different experience for the European pros. But again, like you said, if you're targeting the Olympics, Tour de France, world sort of part of the year, you want to be good in January, but you don't want to be too good.
Because there's time to come down from it and build back up, but it's like playing with fire because you could also go too hard and get sick. And if you get sick, it's harder to come back. And then you're compromised for the whole year, like we saw with Brody this year. So it's like, or last year. So it's really a fine line. I feel like on my side of the whole Aussie racing experience, I was coming into it on a continental team and we were lining up against World Tour teams. And so there was a ton of pressure on us to beat the World Tour teams because it didn't matter if when I did the race, it wasn't World Tour, but if we were perceived to be beating World Tour teams at the race, then there was, it looked great for sponsors. It looked great for the European races that we were trying to get into, all of that stuff. So it's really an interesting combination because you also have teams like Life Plus Wahoo who are going to this race above a ton of World Tour teams that opted not to go, and they're looking at this as an opportunity to get points and get seen and all that stuff. So it's a really interesting dynamic that we don't really get to see in many other races. There's some races in Europe that we do get to see this, but not World Tour level. The World Tour level races in Europe are all attended by the World Tour teams with some random exceptions. And so it's the only World Tour race really that is fielded by mostly continental level teams. And I think that makes the racing just a fascinating situation. So we'll talk about that when TDU happens after this weekend. And hopefully everyone gets to watch it. There's a bit of obviously unknown in terms of live coverage right now with GCN.
TDU will be on Channel 7.
Channel 7 in Australia. Check out escapecollective.com. Joe Lindsay is currently writing a piece on where to watch the racing. So he will include TDU in that. And I'll also, if I figure it out, the Wheel Talk newsletter will have a mini preview this week of TDU. So check out the Wheel Talk newsletter on Escape Collective on Tuesday for a preview. And I'll talk about how you can watch it. Definitive. So, should we answer some questions?
Why not?
Let's do it.
Okay. One of the good questions about SC Works dominance, I think we'll save for European season, as SC Works is opted not to go to TDU. So I think we can talk about the SC Works dominance come SC Works entering the fray. But Hannah asked, would love to hear your predictions. Most extravagant prediction on one side of the scale, and also most likely to happen on the other.
I've got a good extravagant one that just popped into my mind.
Okay, hit us with it.
Ellen Van Dyke wins Paris-Roubaix.
That would be so. That's not even extravagant. I feel like that's totally within
it's
reason.
possible.
No, it's possible, but like
It's still
craziness
amazing.
of this is yes, exactly. Because I mean, Paris-Roubaix in April, right?
She gave birth in September.
September, I think, or October.
Yeah,
October.
fall.
There's been so many babies, I can't
So
keep up.
many babies.
But like I'm thinking back to Dijkman after her first pregnancy. I believe she won the Women's Tour of Britain in May. Is that right? And she gave birth to Orla in September, which
Yeah.
I at the time was like,
Wow.
damn,
Yeah.
that's incredible. And the turnaround was
Ellen's turnaround is next level. The fact that Ellen is racing 5 months after.
But I think, I mean, I did follow Lizzie's pregnancy quite closely because I just thought it was, you know, she was really the first one. Not to say that there weren't other women in women's cycling who had babies, but a rider of her caliber who had decided had given birth. And with Ellen, I also followed along with her pregnancy, and it seemed like, you know, she published all her training data and everything. She managed to really maintain quite a high, like a decent load till the very end. And you could see she was on training camp with her team with wonderful support of her partner, and their son was there with them, which was so cool to see. I don't think she lost that much, to be honest. And I think that's why she is a person who's very realistic with her expectations. So for her to be going well in the spring, which is going to be so important if she wants to make the Olympic team, which she's already said she does, I honestly believe she could do it.
I think so too. I mean, it's been so impressive to watch her, and it's one of those like don't try it at home folk situations. Like obviously she has a team dedicated to making sure she and the baby are both progressing well over her whole pregnancy, and so it's not something that anyone should do without that kind of support. But as a professional athlete, watching her train and also come back and have such high goals for the season, and also feel good enough that she's going to be racing 5 months after giving birth is just incredible. Absolutely incredible. When I think about where I was
Good
5
shout.
months after birth, like I don't. I still couldn't
and
fit
that's
many
also
points.
good to note, though, Abby. Like it's really cool to have these stories because we can really champion women and what they're capable of, and the support around them so they can do so. But it's also important to note for most mere mortals that's really not realistic, and how much support they're getting to do what they're doing. So personally, I don't have any expectations of bouncing back that quickly. And I think it's important for most women to know that you shouldn't probably bounce back that quickly, or at least that you don't have to.
Thank you for bringing that up, Gracie. I think that's such a relevant point. This being my second pregnancy, and I'm nowhere near an athlete anymore. I think the first pregnancy I was still quite fit, bunny ears. This one, I think I said to you guys, I'm the most unfit I've ever been in my life. And that's also due to current life circumstances. But for just your everyday person who has a normal job and other things going on in life, it's just not possible. And this really is a career. So it's kind of like trying to have, trying to juggle your professional career in a normal working life, say as a lawyer or whatever, and having a child and balancing that. And I feel athletes almost have a better support around them to be able to manage that side of things. But that could be my interpretation.
Here's my extravagant prediction of 2024. I think that the Giro is actually going to deliver live coverage, like quality situation.
Great stages. Good field.
I feel like maybe...
And pre-Olympics.
Yeah, pre-Olympics. Like, I think it's actually going to be like a really good Giro that we're going to get this year for the first time. Like, there have been years where we've had a great field, but we've had no live coverage and the race has been poorly organized. And there's been years where we've had live coverage, but it's not been a great field. There's not much depth, especially when it came to the GC. And I think going into this year, with where it is in the calendar, with the tour being after the Olympics and all of that, plus the new organizers, I think we're going to get both good racing and good coverage. And I'm fully prepared to be heartbroken come like stage 2. But that is my unhinged prediction.
Okay, my extravagant prediction is Lizzie Deignan will win the Olympics.
Oh my God, how?
Oh, that's a good one.
Cool would that be?
I know.
Also possible. It's very possible.
It is possible.
I would be crying so hard that you would there would be no recording a podcast for 2 weeks because I would not have a voice. Yeah.
That'd be pretty great. I would be happy about that.
The other rider that I think that I would like completely lose my cool over would be
Cassia.
But I don't think she's racing. I think she's come out and said she's not. But I think that will change if she actually dives into the course more, because talking to some of the riders that have seen the course already, I think it was perceived as a sprinter race before, but now that they've actually seen it, it's like similar-ish to the Worlds this year, 2023 Worlds, in that there's like the circuit in Paris has some climbing in it that I think will break it up a bit more. But I digress. If Elisa Longo-Borghini wins the Olympic road race, I will never stop. Like, you'll never hear the end of it.
She's won 2 bronze medals, right?
Yes. She's been third last 2 Olympics. So, can you imagine?
Consistency.
I think that she might be the most consistent rider in women's cycling.
Yeah.
And when she wins, it's so impressive. Like, when she won Paris-Roubaix and, just not her style of race, not her style of win, it was incredible. But she's so consistently up there, but just doesn't have the 2% it takes to win the race. But she's so good. She's so good. Anyway, those 2 riders. What do we have? Do we have any more likely predictions? If I predict another SC Works a year of us, us being SC Works won yet again.
I wrote down some ages ago, but now reading them back, they're not that good.
Read them.
I'll say them anyway. Human Powered Health and EF to be bigger players.
I mean, I think that's definitely going to happen, especially Human Powered Health picking up Ruth and picking up a couple other riders this year. I think they're going to definitely be, plus without the men's team, with all their support towards the women, I think it's going to be a completely different team. And they have all different management too, they have a new DS and Georgia Bronzini. So
Ruth has worked with Georgia, so that will be good.
Jeff, asked, I was thinking about mindset and whether the crew can think back about their time as a professional and if they have examples of how a change in mindset led to improvement in performance. I would be interested in how individuals perform better in different teams, not purely because of the team is stronger, but the environment for that individual. A two-parter here. Either you want to tackle it first?
I can start. I think that this is worth a whole podcast, this question. It's a really good one, but to keep it short, there was a few things that helped my mindset without anything more intensive, like having a sports psychologist. And it was just having some good mantras and quotes. And I think most athletes have a really favorite mantra or quote that kind of grounds them or motivates them or puts them back in the moment. For me, it was more around that start line nerves. I probably wouldn't get that nervous until I was on the start line, except for if it was a really big race and I'd be nervous all morning, maybe for the day before too. But it was kind of just reminding myself that pressure was a privilege. So I found that really helpful in my mindset to be like, I'm so lucky to be here at all in my life circumstances. That I got to do cycling and then got to be in this team and to be at this race. So that kind of put things in perspective for me. And the other one, which when I was on the start line, would be if I was looking around at people, especially in the classics when it was bad weather, and they'd be in their beautiful warm jackets and they're drinking hot chocolates. And I'm just thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I about to put myself through all of this? What if I don't win? All of those thoughts that come into mind, wishing I was those people just having a nice day. I would think they're here to watch us. Like the only reason they're here having a nice time is because of us. And we're the special ones. And it's something that I'll miss when I retire is being one of the ones on this side of the fence. And when I retired, that was exactly what I felt, was just realizing even more how special that was to be on that side of the fence when you're no longer there anymore. So I'm really glad that I thought that as much as I could in my career. And having access to sports psychologists is way more common now, and I didn't really do it that much in my career, and I wish I had. And I know more and more people are doing it now, and I think that's super helpful. Everyone has different needs and things that they want to work on. So it is pretty individualistic as well.
Yeah, pressure is a privilege. I think that's a great one. And I think sometimes just in general in life, we put too much pressure on ourselves. And like you said, Gracie, it actually makes me think about maybe if I had more times on the start line, thought about the journey to getting to the start line and how that all started with that childhood dream, and how few people, this is something I used to come back to try and ground myself, was how few people can actually say that they achieved that dream that they had as a child, whether that was because you wanted to be a fireman or something like that. I think it's very rare in life, if you reflect back on what you really wanted as a kid, that you actually achieved. And for me, it was always just to wear the green and gold, not specifically in one race, but I just had this dream of wearing green and gold. For me, the biggest thing, or the game changer, and I wish if I had stuck in the sport longer, I think that this person could have had a huge impact on my career, was had a difficult time at the end of 2015. And it was a friend who put me in touch with this mentor who mentored me all through 2016. And having this guy, Bill, in my life really changed how I viewed sport. And he worked with some of Australia's biggest athletes, and I just wondered why he was taking the time to work with me. And it was like completely, free of charge. I could call him whenever I wanted. And I guess meeting this guy and just talking to him about life and sport and his experiences with some of the top athletes, definitely helped me. So strong mentor. I also didn't work with a psychologist during my career, but I think I should have 100%. And that's something I definitely would have done differently had I continued on in the sport. Maybe that would have been one of the deciding factors of me actually having a longer career.
I think that's some really great stuff extra there, Lauren. Like, mentors can also be such a great person to have in your support network. It doesn't have to be a clinical or, official psychologist. I think it's good to identify as an individual what, like, maybe some of the things that might hold you back and the why. And I think maybe if you just got a few things that you'd like to tweak, a performance coach or a mentor is a really good option. But if you know that you've got a bit of extra past trauma or some issues that you've really had to deal with, such as eating disorders or any mental health concerns, that's where you would like to step further down into seeing someone more highly educated in those specific areas, because it's not a one size fits all kind of box ticking exercise of how to be a resilient, strong, motivated, happy athlete. There's so many things there that come into play that it's really good to just think about it, try and make a good informed decision. And also, it's okay if it didn't quite work, just try again, try someone new and try a different avenue.
Yeah, finding the right psychologist is like dating.
Yeah.
That ties into, I think, when I had my most positive mindset when I was racing, it was when I had a coach that I really adored and trusted and was available in more ways than just like, here's your training for the day. This is, here's your power goals, whatever. Someone that I could go and like have a burger with, and there was no like judgment. And we talked a lot about life things, and we stay in touch to this day because we had such a good relationship. And I had coaches before that I was afraid of and really didn't bring out the best in me. And working with someone on the performance side that I had a good relationship with, which I also like when people ask me, oh, if there's, what's something you would advise to a junior or something. And I always say, like, coaching, finding the right coach for you is like dating, and it's like a relationship. You need to have trust both ways, and you need to have good communication. And I think for me, the happiest I was in my career when I was working with Ben Day as my coach, because I just got along with him super well.
I've heard the best things about
he's
him.
amazing.
Someone I knew from Australia used to work with him when she was racing in Australia.
We still have send burger pictures back and forth and like rate burgers back and forth, which is like when it comes for someone who struggled a lot with eating disorders in their career. For me, it was a big deal that I had a coach that didn't make a big deal out of that, but subtly kind of kept me on track in that sense. And I had a coach before who would encourage me not to eat and like always talking about weight and stuff like that. And that was a really bad, dark time in my career. And so for me, I always tell people that you really need to love your coach, because they are the ones who should know the most about you as much as your partner. If you want to be successful, your coach needs to know everything about you to like an almost weird, level. So having a coach that you really love, but also friends that keep you grounded and keep you, I think for me, like I had this group of friends that were sport adjacent, like either their partner raced or they raced or something that never put too much emphasis on cycling. Like we would get together and we would have dance parties. We wouldn't talk about cycling, but they also knew the pressures of the sport and knew what I needed to do to be the best that I could be. And so they were encouraging, but not too much where it felt like they were putting pressure on me or making the pressure worse. They were taking the pressure off of me by making me see the fun in everything. But we could go on training rides and then have a dance party, and it was awesome. So like having friends that understand, but are also, you know, understand the good and the bad and are able to kind of lead you through it all. I think that a lot of positive mindset comes back to the community that you have around you and your team, be that, you know, your partner, your coach, your sports psych, your nutritionist, whatever, like the team that you have involved in your career, they should make you feel good. And that will inform your mindset.
High level sport, it is all consuming. And we've spoken about this before, how good it is to have other interests or hobbies or goals outside of sport. Because I think when it's all you've ever done, like for myself and actually for my best friend Carly, starting very, very young with competitive sport and being very good, very young, wasn't the best thing. And it also meant that everything in my life personally revolved around sport. And once I left school and university, I didn't have normal people in my life that, you know, had other interests and hobbies and, you know, competing and results and, you know, making it into the professional ranks weren't thoughts that consumed them. Where when I moved to Girona, it was a wonderful thing because I found a community and a home and a family away from Australia. But again, it was very much, you get caught up in this bubble of just cycling, which probably wasn't the best thing, actually.
It's an interesting situation because it's the people you spend the most time with. And I think, like, when it comes to your social circle and who you spend time with off the bike and also on the bike, like training rides and stuff, you can't choose who your team is. Like, you have no say in who your teammates are, who your DS is. If you're lucky, you get along with your team. And I think that in women's cycling, it's probably more likely that you get along with your team.
I wonder if that's changing.
Yeah, I think it is, actually.
As it
I think it is.
Because when I think of SD Works, I think it's a really good organization that works well together. They're good teammates, they're good workmates, they respect each other. But I'm not necessarily going to ask you out for Friday drinks.
What, you don't want to go get drinks with Lola Kopecky and Demi Vollering? Just the two of them? No, yeah, like
that'd be a great night.
You can't pick who your teammates are. You're hired to a team, and if you're lucky, like, you get along. But you pick who you spend every day with, and it's important to pick people you spend every day with that lift you up. And I think, like, even in a non-sports related area, like as a completely normal person who doesn't compete in sport or have any sport, just like maybe, I don't know, any human being, you want people who you go and you see and they put a smile on your face. And it's the same with the people that you choose in sport, and those people will make your mindset in life. But the two things when you're a professional athlete are they're fused. Your mindset in life and your mindset in sport are exactly that. There's no difference between the two.
But I have to say, I do miss people like you guys now. I would take the Girona bubble back if I could.
Man, I'm so bummed that we never.
It's way better.
Us and Taylor didn't overlap in Girona like enough.
Taylor and I had a nice overlapping as teammates and residents of Girona.
I feel like in the beginning it was funny because I was just like in awe of her, and they tell you not to meet your heroes, and then I met Taylor and I was like, I don't know what that's about because she is above and beyond. But it took us a while to actually become friends because I think like I was so like I had her up on a pedestal, and so I was like scared. And then she's just Taylor. It's funny.
She's just this
I feel like I
lovely,
would have been the same with Gracie.
beautiful.
I would have been like, oh my God.
I reckon people get the same vibe with Gracie, 100%. Actually, I'm trying to think who, and it was like to do with Britt Lindor. It's like you want to be friends with them, but you don't. Yeah, like you're not intimidated, but it's like that one person you want to be friends with.
Yeah, I totally see that.
I do want to finish that question though, because it is a listener question. And I think anyone that, reads sports biographies, watches sports docos, asks questions like this, I think so many people love sports and athletes because they're trying to seek out the answers to some questions that athletes seem to have the answers to. And athletes are still just normal people. They're an iceberg, much like any other person. It may look like they're doing it alone, and they may look like they're full of all of this extra special juice to get them to that point. And at a certain point, if they have to run that 100-meter final or they have to cross that line at the Olympics or whatever it is, they do have to do that tiny last bit alone, but everything else is never alone. And Abby and Lauren both touched on it. It's finding people that make you happy, finding people you trust, finding people you value, finding people that you can be vulnerable with. They're the ones that get you to a good mindset. You can do bits and pieces by yourself, but you can't read all the books and do it alone. It's just not possible. So if you're a regular person listening to this, like that's the advice that we've all given in different ways, is like, ask for help, find mentors, find extra support when you need it, lean on your friends, find good people around you that act as that great coach or that great person that you can lean on, because you need different perspectives and you need help to get anywhere that you want to go to.
The second part of that question, individuals performing better in different teams, not because of how strong the team is, but the environment. That's an interesting one that I think we could also make a whole podcast about. But there's a lot to be said about the management of a team and how the management, the DSs and the team manager and all those people above the riders set the tone for the whole team, and how the impact of just the management on the riders can make or break a team's performance throughout the year, but also if the riders get along. I've been on teams where we had just horrendous management, and I look at the riders that I was teammates with that I cannot stand, and I think, well, any other situation, we would have been great friends. But the management drove us apart in their poor managing. And I also look at teams where we had really strong management that put a lot of emphasis on teamwork and being one unit. And those are the teammates that I'm still really close with to this day. So I think that when it comes to the environment of a team, the management has a lot of impact on that.
I think this goes for any workplace, honestly. And going back to my mentor, Bill, he was actually the head coach of the Australian swim team during the golden era of the Michael Clem, Kieran Perkins. And he now, that's what his job is actually going around and, coaching very, very big companies and organizations on developing this culture within the workplace, because I think that's what it comes down to. It comes down to culture. And if you have a good culture, then everything else comes after.
Yeah, agree.
I think we can use that to go into our final listener question. And I think in lieu of what we're obsessed with, we'll just pick our dream teams for lack of time. Unless either of you have a really good obsession, then you can veto my decision. But we already talked about how both of you are having babies. So I feel like that's just an obsession that I'm also obsessed with both of your babies. So there we go. Check. Okay. Michelle asked, pick your dream team for 2024, bikes, riders, DS, etc. Can I go first?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we mentioned in the last episode that you could pick riders that aren't currently racing, but I'd already made a list. And so I'm just going to stick with that list because whilst I would absolutely love to compile a team of former riders. I think I'll just go with riders that are currently racing. And my roster makes limited sense, but I think I went for vibes. With a couple with a couple people that you'd be crazy not to put on a cycling team. So I've got Marlon Reusser, Corinne Lebecki, Lotte Kopecky, Zoe Backstead, Ricarda Bauernfeind, Soraya Paladin, Georgia Williams. Just a random pick there, but it makes sense in my head. Grace Brown, Marta Cavalli, Elisa Longoborghini, Shirin Van Anrooy, Brody Chapman, Emma Norsgaard, Liana Lippert, and Ann Henderson. It's a big team.
You've just gone for like favorites. Right.
No, but it makes sense though, because you've got like really strong people who could be good team captains on the road, like Brody Chapman, for example. And then I got a couple like sprinters in there with Corinne and like Emma Norsgaard as a fun classics rider. Plus you've got really strong domestiques with like Georgia Williams, Anna Henderson, and some young riders with Shirin and Zoe and Ricarda. Plus, like, Soraya is a super valuable rider. And then I have climbers with Liana Lippert. And Cavalli. And Longoborghini is just, like, good at everything. And how could you not put Marlon Reusser on a team? And my team would be riding Trek bikes. Aside from my potential bias there, I think that the company has proven how much they care about women's cycling. And so even if they're not the best bikes out there, which I don't know, I've not ridden all the bikes, how like the amount that they've invested into the sport and the level that they've raised women's teams to, I couldn't not pick Trek as the bikes that I would want my team to ride. My DS would be Iris Slappendal. She's gonna hate that, but I just think she would be so good, man. She'd be so good. So perhaps I'd throw Gracie in the ring for that. Yes.
No, I'm good at talking about them. I don't know about talking to them.
That's fair. Yeah, that would be my team. It makes total sense in my head, but then it also doesn't.
All right. I actually, yeah. Okay.
See, now you're thinking about it. Doesn't it make more sense?
I had a pretty similar list too, actually. You go, Lauren.
Mine's pretty long. But actually teams are pretty big now, right?
Yeah, Trek has 19.
Yeah, exactly. I made this list and I was like, oh man, this is so many riders. And then I was like, yeah, but look at like the amount of races on the calendar these days.
Yeah. True. All right, my list. I've got two little groups, and my thought process is so domestiques, or more in the working roles, but of course domestiques can have opportunities at some points. But these are like the hardcore ones that actually they're not there to have an opportunity, which sounds bad. Anyway, you know what I mean. like a typical men's domestique, which is what
they're a career domestique.
Career. There we go. Thank you, Gracie. Loretta Hansen, Romy Casper, Soraya Paladin, Jess Allen, because there were a few years there that she was brilliant, actually, and Christine Mayoris as my key team. Then I've got Dignan, Longoborghini, Elvin, Bluck, Peters, Neuerdoma, Tudenberg, De Hoorde, Kopecky, and Shirin Van Anrooy. Shirin. That's my team. And then my DSs would be Iris and Zach Dempster.
Oh, Zach. Yeah, that's a good choice.
Very good.
I didn't do too bad, huh?
No,
well,
that was good.
I have a loyalty.
You said you weren't prepared.
I know, but actually I had the list in my head the whole time. I just had to I have a loyalty to Specialized. I love Trek as a company, and I love what they're doing across all disciplines. I think it's amazing what they're doing as well in terms of developing really good cargo bikes, and they're putting a lot of emphasis into cycling advocacy, which actually Specialized are doing the same. I'm so jealous. But they always took really good care of us at Specialized Lululemon, and they did put us at the top. They cared about the team. So that was my experience professionally. And now on the other side, I'm still working somewhat in the industry, but more in the mountain biking sector, and there's really good support there as well for trail advocacy and other such things. And then again, just that personal relationship I've had within the company. They've been really supportive this past year and sent Harry a really great second birthday present, which just made his day. So, and I like the bikes. I really loved racing on Specialized bikes when I had those few years with the team.
All right, Gracie, who's your team?
Well, it's pretty similar. I've put it in three categories: young talent, Niedermeyer, Raylini, Roseman, Gannon, and Norsgaard.
Nice.
They're all winners already, but they're all pretty bloody young still. Next category is workhorses / lead out / can still win. A bit like Lauren. Aladdin, Ardegeest, Hansen, Georgie, Brand, Rusa, and Henderson. And
Fight for Georgie.
Forgot about her.
She's going to be one to watch this year, but she's amazing. So versatile.
Huge asset. Yeah.
Good lead out, if nothing else. And the stars are Brown, Diagnan, Elisa Longa Borghini, Lippert, Cool, and Kopecky.
Nice. It's a good team.
So I think we're all on the similar page to our pick. I find it interesting. Yeah. I'm pretty sure none of us chose Weebus or Vollering.
No, I did notice that. Too obvious?
It was too obvious.
I'll tell you why.
But also culture.
It's because they're too good.
Kind of nice to gang up on them.
It's because they're too good. They're incredible, and I think Weebus in particular is like a really fun rider. Like she's fun on and off the bike, and you can tell in the way that she interacts with her teammates when she wins and stuff like that. Like you can read a lot into how somebody, like when the camera is on them, how their body movements and everything. But I feel like Vollering and Weebus are so good that they just. I think SC Works does such a good job of spreading out the wins and allowing other riders on the team to have an opportunity, or like even Demi and Royce are at races like Tour de Suisse and stuff like that. But that is such a rare thing on a team with the riders that strong to be able to manage their personalities. I feel like, or manage their abilities. I feel like for me, I wouldn't want someone that good on a team because it really is a delicate balance of culture on the team. If you have someone who's that good, it's hard to manage. And I think that SC Works has people on the management side that have been doing this for so long and have dealt with riders that good for so long that they know what they're doing, but not every team could do that. Like, I don't think there's even a single other team that I can think of that could have riders that are that good, plus a whole other roster of riders, and be able to make it work.
Well, I think that says a lot about the culture they've developed over the past, how long's that team been around? 12 years now? I mean, once Diagnan signed in 2013, that's when it started becoming the team it is now. That was the start, really, of it.
Yeah, she joined the team when it wasn't like it was the Rabobank days, and Boels Dolmans wasn't really a major.
Yeah, because our drink folded the year after London Olympics. They had some big names there. They took over the riders from Cervelo test team. And then, it was kind of like Lizzie went to the smaller team and had a few good riders, some good support, but it really built from 2014 on.
But yeah, I think that's fascinating that none of us pick them. But I think we all were probably in the same mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing like negative about the two of them. I think it's yeah.
You got to build a good cohesive team and a good culture. Not that
Yeah,
they don't have good
exactly.
culture, but
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just, it's a recipe, isn't it? For a DS,
We did pick Kopecky, though.
yeah, she's
Sorry, Gracie.
even though we debated her versus Vollering, she's still like, I don't know, so amazing in so many different ways. It's kind of like, what else can she do?
She's not overpowering, too. I think she's still like, I mean, arguably, she's more experienced than Vollering in the amount of time that she's been in the peloton. But she's still so, like, I don't want to say forgettable because that sounds mean, but she's still under the radar in a way, even though she's the world champion. Like, she's still, she's not the first person that springs to mind. And I think that's a good thing when building a team. Like, she would still be the out and out leader in many of the races, like looking at the start list or looking at the roster, but it's not like she's over.
Talking about mindset, that is an athlete I would really like to understand their mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Gracie, who's your DS?
I also had Iris, and I had another two. Lois Gunnewijk was probably my favorite teammate ever. She was, she is now a DS for the national team, the Dutch national team, so she knows what she's doing. But she was like probably one of my best mentors and teammates over the years. I probably learnt the most from her. And Judith Arndt, because she's just no bullshit. And I think like both of those two women, and Iris included, they're not threatened by other women or other people's success. They've got great race brains and they're quite good communicators. And I think that's super important as a DS, particularly that point about not being threatened by other people. I think they would just be really great leaders, as well as being supportive people in general. So I think that's super important. And
good shout.
Yeah, and I really want to reiterate your point about the bike brands. Like I wouldn't be able to choose probably between Trek and Specialized because their technology is amazing, but their ethos is really sound, and they put their money where their mouth is. And I was with Scott for pretty much the whole time I was with Green Edge, and we had a meeting with them like not that long before I retired, and they were trying to like get us excited about the brand, and they showed us this promo video, and I counted the times there was women in it, which was once. And I'd already gone and looked at their Instagram and their website, which had pretty much 0 women and nothing about us winning races for many years before that. And I pointed it out. I said, your brand is just not female friendly in any sense. Like, how could you change that? If you want us to be on board with your brand, we're sponsored by you, but we want to buy into you as well, and how can you also buy into us? And they started posting way more stuff, but it was still such a masculine brand, and I felt like it was still kind of tokenistic. And same with some of the clothing brands. Like the Green Edge women's team was very well supported over the years. I'm not going to say that it was a facade, because it wasn't. It was a really great team overall, but the sponsors didn't care that much. They put what they needed to put in, and we got good support in general. But like, I never got to wear my national stripes on my sleeve after I wasn't national champion anymore. Like, it's just stuff like that just kind of got to you, of not feeling visible in the brand, in their content and advertising, and then not feeling like they really cared when it came to the details like that. So I think it's really important to have brands that are on board with women's sport and women's cycling.
SRAM needs a shout out too, because they're another fantastic brand.
Yeah, I was going to say Canyon as well. SRAM's done amazing things for women's cycling and continues, and cycling in general, and the whole sport. And yeah, Canyon, I think, is working their way up there in terms of the amount of support that they give to teams. I mean, they've always been obviously a co-sponsor of Canyon SRAM, but they're definitely putting a lot into women's cycling in all disciplines at this point. I think all 3 of our teams would ride Velocio.
Oh yeah, I was going to add that in too. Good one. Thanks for reminding me. I'm obsessed with that brand.
No question.
being pregnant and starting to change shape, I've been obsessed with the Luxe Nicks now for like since I retired, and I've got a set in pretty much every color, and they still are just moving with me, and I'm just so stoked about that. I just love all their colors.
I'll never forget. I was wearing them one day, and I was riding, and I had stopped to like check my phone, I think, or something. I was standing on the side of the road, and this woman rode up to me, and she was like, "I'm sorry, I just need to say that your bibs look really comfortable." And that poor woman, because then I was like, "Oh my God, let me tell you all about them." And I spent like 5 minutes standing there telling her about how great the Luxe bibs were, and then I was like,
I
"Feel
know
them.
the material,
Like, touch my
fabric.
thigh."
so
It's like-
silky.
It's comparable to Lululemon fabric. Like, it's so good. It's just next level. You can't buy anything else that's as good as it, I don't think.
Those are our teams. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode. Lauren, thank you for joining. I don't know when you'll be back. We'll give you your time to to adjust to your new normal, but we'll have you back on soon. And when Gracie and I are back next week, we'll talk about TDU.